Let's go and Ali.
I think it's going to have a look on the screen.
Grimm
To the brim.
Grimm to the brim.
Grim to the brim.
Brim to the brim.
Grimm.
Brim to the brim.
Grim to the brim.
Brim to the brim. Grim to the rim.
Grim to the brim.
Grim. Brim to the rim. Still grim.
Grim to the brim.
Brim to the rim.
Grim to the brim.
Grim. Brim to the rim.
Grim to the brim.
Grim.
Good day and welcome to Grimm to the brim. No, it doesn't sound Geordie enough. Good day.
Remember, it's season 2.
Oh shit! I didn't even think. Good day. Good day. Good day. You can use whichever one of these is best. Good day.
Andy, you're doing what Marilyn Monroe did, where she took 84 takes to say, hey.
Yes. 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 Good day. No, I don't have the right.
I'm going to fill you in if you don't read off the fucking script.
Gonna have to insist on a little bit more confidence in your
Okay.
speaking.
Hello and welcome to Grimm to the Brim, the only podcast in the world about the Grimm fairy tales.
Is that true?
I heard it was true anyway.
Let's just say it's true. And if you don't think it's true, then write into the PO box
Like,
4492.
a quick poll. Have you actually ever heard another one?
Yes.
What do you mean, yes?
When you type it in, others come up.
Others do come up. I never said that they were better than ours, because ours is obviously the best, but others do come up, yeah.
So how do people even find us? Do they have to scroll all the way to the bottom?
Actually, no, we're only...
Now we come up like second.
Yeah, we're like 4 in or something, yeah.
4 in?
There's not a lot of them.
It's weird that other people in the world have heard of Grimm's.
I think we should be higher than page 4. But
You want to be page 3, don't you?
Back up, Andy. We're only like 8 episodes in.
every week we spend roughly half an hour reminding you why your subconscious suppressed all memory of the Grimm fairy tales in the first place by reading 1 or 2 of them and reacting with a lot of swears and northern vowels. See, when I read stuff, I sound just like I'm on the radio.
Oh, you wrote this down. That's why. That's
Yeah,
why
no.
you keep coming back. Okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, this is very professional.
Yeah, it's too pre-planned. Anyway, I'm Andy Cheesefish, and I'm joined today by...
Davy Mustard Face.
And...
Bananananks.
And...
Kid Piumpots.
Is there anyone else? No, that's all
I
of us.
believe Jen is
Jen's
on
here.
extended
really?
annual leave. She is here, but she will not be playing the harp today.
She's here in
because
spirit.
She's very sore, and she's still recovering from a vicious bee attack. She's here.
We don't know if she's alive, but she's
I
here.
don't think we should trouble her.
She's
this week.
waving. You say bees, but that just... Wasn't it wasps?
It was wasps,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, shit. Hey, a little throwback to an episode that a lot of people won't have listened to because this is season 2, and
Oh,
people don't
shit.
like to look back at the old seasons.
It's a throwback.
It's a throwback to some season 1 shit.
Isn't it? I think Kate has a story for us this week.
I do.
A Grimm story. It is a Grimm one you've got, right?
Well, I was going to read When Harry Met Sally, but you've fucked my my ideas up. Doesn't matter then.
No. Season 2, we still read stories about Grimm things.
It's called Fitcher's Bird. Once upon a time, there was a sorcerer who was a thief, and he used to go begging from house to house in the guise of a beggar. Not overly sure what else he would go in the guise of if he's begging, but one time a maiden opened the door and gave him a piece of bread. He only had to touch her to force her to jump into his basket. Then he
Hello.
carried her off to his house, where everything was splendid inside, and he gave her whatever she desired. Some time later, he said to her, "I have some business to attend to outside the house, and so I must take a trip. Here is an egg. Take good care of it and carry it with you wherever you go."
Do you want an egg in these trying times?
Yeah, it's an egg. I'm going out. I'm going to have to remember that next time I go to the pub.
"I'm also giving you a key, and if you value your life, don't go into the room that it opens." Nevertheless, when he was gone, she went and opened up
Why
this
give it a
room. And as she entered it, she saw a large basin in the middle with dead and butchered people lying in it. She was so tremendously horrified that the egg she was carrying plopped into the basin.
Oh,
To be sure, She quickly took it out and wiped the blood off, but the blood reappeared instantly. She wiped and scraped, but she couldn't get rid of the stain.
Just so we're
On
clear,
the egg.
he said, if you value your life, do not go into the room with the keys in. And the next sentence in the story is, as she went into the fucking room that he said not to. Like, that is literally
Also,
the first thing.
Well,
Throwback to the beginning of the story, which no one seemed to just, acknowledge. He touched her and forced her into his basket.
Yeah.
it sounded more like he touched her and then she was happy to get in.
A sexy touch into the basket, love.
Yeah, more of a coercion than a forceful thing.
He grabbed her by the pussy.
He trumped her into the basket.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually really... I guess it's just your own interpretation, whether you think she was good. It did say he carried off to his house where everything was splendid.
Like, what kind of
inside.
touch would...
Yeah.
Well, what kind of touch is going to get you to go in a basket? Because, first of all, it's going to have to be in a massive basket because I'm a big bitch.
He only had to touch her to force her to jump into his basket.
Oh, it did say force.
So he did force her.
Yeah.
My mistake.
So it was unwilling.
Yeah, but his house was splendid and she had whatever she wanted, so...
Oh, no bother then.
Yeah.
Oh, that usually shuts women up, doesn't it? Wants to see all the splendour of the house.
When the man returned from his journey, he demanded the key and the egg. He looked at both of them and he realised right away that she'd been in the bloody chamber. "Didn't you pay attention to my instructions? Now you'll go back into the bloody chamber against your will."
Oh, bloody heck.
Again.
Bloody chamber.
Upon saying this, he grabbed her, led her to the chamber, chopped her into pieces, and tossed her into the basin with the others.
Took things up a notch there, didn't
Why
he?
didn't he just put her in the basket?
Giving her an egg 1 minute and chopping her up into pieces the next.
You don't want to just force her in the basket.
You can't just keep her in the basket.
He basically said, "Don't touch the big red button, don't press that big red button," and she went, "Ooh, what does this button do?" And that's it.
She didn't. She dropped her egg in it.
Well, yeah.
Oh, she's dropped her egg in it. You've dropped your egg right in it
Get
this
in
time.
basket, love. Go on.
In the bloody room.
That's the origin of the phrase, isn't it?
After some time had passed, the man went begging again and captured the second daughter. He took her from the house, and the same thing happened to her. She opened the forbidden door, let the egg fall into the blood, and was chopped to pieces and thrown into the basin. Now, the sorcerer wanted to have the third daughter as well, so he captured her and he put her into his basket. After he returned home, he gave her the key and the egg before he set out on his journey. However, the third daughter was smart and cunning. She put the egg into a cupboard and then went into the secret chamber. When she found her sisters in the bloody basin, she looked all over the place for their missing parts and put them all together, head, body, arms and legs. And so the two sisters came back to life.
Right.
Then
course.
their sister led them out of the chamber and hid them. When the man came home and didn't find any bloodstains on the egg, he asked the third sister to become his bride. She said yes, but she told him that before she'd marry him, he had to fill his basket full of gold and carry it to her parents on his back. In the meantime, she would make preparations for the wedding. Instead, she stuck her sisters into the basket, covered them with gold, and told them they were to get help from home. "Now carry this basket to my parents," she said to the man, "but don't dare to stop and rest along the way. I can see everything from my window." So the man lifted the basket onto his back and went on his way. It was, however, so heavy he was almost crushed to death by the weight. At one point he wanted to rest, but one of the sisters immediately cried out from the basket, "I see from my window that you're resting. Get a move on at once." He thought it was his bride who was crying out, so he immediately continued walking. Whenever he stopped along the way, he heard a voice and had to keep moving. Back at his place, the bride took a skull, decorated it with jewels, and set it on the window case. Then she invited the sorcerer's friends to the wedding, and after that was done, she dipped herself into a barrel of honey, cut open a bed, rolled around in the feathers so that it was impossible to recognise her, because she looked so strange. And this is how she set out on her way.
Can we talk a little bit about the sorcerer's friends who are getting invited to this wedding?
Yeah.
That's her wedding dress. It's just feathers. And they're all like, all right.
No, she's in disguise.
And the sorcerer is, I guess, is supposed to be the skull with the gems on
Well,
it.
you'll see, won't you? So she set out on her way, and soon she met some of the wedding guests, who asked, "Where are you coming from, O Fitcher's bird? From Fitcher's house, haven't you heard? And what may the young bride be doing there? She swept the whole house from top to bottom. Just now she's looking straight out of the window." Soon thereafter she met the bridegroom, who was on his return home. This is the sorcerer. Where are you coming from, O Fitcher's bird? From Fitcher's house, haven't you heard? And what may the young bride be doing there? She swept the whole house from top to bottom. Just now she's looking straight out of the window. The bridegroom looked and saw the decorated skull. He thought it was his bride, and he waved to her. However, once he and his guests
very
were
confused now.
all gathered inside the house, the helpers who were sent by the sisters finally arrived. These people locked all the doors of the house, and then they set fire to it. And since nobody could get out, they were all burned to death. The end.
Wow, okay, that was a happy ending.
So the skull that she put on the windowsill, that she just decorated a skull with some jewels. The sorcerer
whose skull?
guy.
Like she could have put all the other body parts back together, but she
She
just
didn't care about them, did she?
So the skull with the gems, that was the sorcerer.
No, the skull with the gems was supposed to look like her. So that when the sorcerer was coming back to the house, he would look at the window and go, oh, that skull covered in the gems is clearly the girl I'm going to marry, my bride, looking at me like
How
that.
amazing do you think, does she think she looks? She thinks she's like diamond or something.
It's clearly not this weird woman-shaped bird thing who's talking to me right now. That's not suspicious at all.
With a load of dirty eggs.
Yeah.
he's got a real blind spot for any kind of poultry.
Apparently.
Don't we all?
He doesn't even look at its face. He's just look at its like chickeny legs, its feathery gams. Whoa.
Feathery gams.
Look at those feathery gams.
I feel like we learn more and more about you every week, Andy.
What is the moral of the story with this one?
The moral of the story, don't press the big red button.
Or drop an egg on it?
Yes.
None of them. None of them could resist it for a moment.
No, it's like curiosity killed the cat,
No,
isn't it? I think
there's
that's the
also
moral
like
of the story.
if you are going to press the big red button, make sure you put your egg in the cupboard first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Protect your egg, bitches.
Yes, it's sex ed. That's what this was.
Why did they carry it around with them, though? When he's like, look after this, you'd be like, well, I'll just put it in the fridge for now, and I'll just eat it when I'm hungry. You can carry it around with you for the rest of the day.
It's not the most straightforward, like, this story, is it?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's a really straightforward story.
Come on.
That she smuggled her sisters out in his basket and told them to go back to her parents and send help. So they sent help. The people that came to help.
Right.
I remember reading this when I was checking for my stories
And you
and thinking
thought-
it was too mad.
Really straightforward, this.
It is really straightforward.
You know, these Grimm's lads, they didn't really have time to flesh out these stories. And if they did, I think maybe some of the charm would be lost. Reel to the Breal. Reel to the Breal is where we take a real-life event and spin it into a Grimm's fairy tale type story for you listeners. And we like to explain that every week on Grimm to the Brim, so that nobody is confused.
My reel to the Breal is called The Maiden and the Lavatory. There was once a timid handmaiden called Bertha, whose bold name didn't quite fit her shy and quiet disposition. She led an ordinary life as a servant girl to the most beautiful and spoiled princess in the land. On the princess's 16th birthday, they held a most spectacular banquet in the largest and most ornate hall of the castle. The princess demanded that the guest list be comprised of only the most beautiful people in her village. The king and queen, deemed too old and ugly, were barred from the event and sent away to a neighbouring village until the day passed. In fact, all of the servants apart from Bertha were dismissed for the day. Bertha, being the most beautiful of all servants, was now quite busy doing all of the work they were no longer allowed to do. The princess also demanded that Bertha wear one of her gowns in order to meet the high standards she had. Bertha looked positively radiant, oozing nobility, but with an unmistakably tired glint in her eye, having spent several hours cooking 500 roast chickens and laying tables for the thousands of hungry guests. The princess had many rules and stipulations, but the most important one of all was this. Only the most beautiful may enter the castle on this day. With the frankly oafish and wart-covered guards dismissed for the day, Bertha had to man the front drawbridge as well as entertaining the guests. She became exhausted and stepped outside for a moment's air, only to hear the tinkling ring of the gate bell in the distance. She peered through the narrow opening in the gigantic castle gate and saw nothing. She sighed in relief and seated herself to catch her breath. Again came a tinkling of the bell. She gathered her strength and heaved upon the 15-foot-wide iron gate to reveal a withered and haggard old woman. Her odour permeated Bertha's nostrils, the smell of shit and desperation, which also incidentally smells a lot like shit, revolted Bertha more than anything had ever revolted her before. "Please, miss," the figure shrieked through ancient dried-out pipes, coughing up a whole cauldron of phlegm. "May I use your latrine for my old bladder? It's no longer under my control." The old, ugly crone was slowly emitting a foul golden fluid, which was trickling down her disgusting legs into a vile puddle. Bertha shriveled her nose in disgust and hurriedly turned the frankly revolting old crone away. At that, the old woman let loose of her bladder, soaking Bertha and all of the castle entranceway with her foul fluid. "With this piss I doth dis, thou shalt never piss alone in peace." The urine-soaked hag cackled and pissed so hard she propelled herself into the sky, whizzing off into the clouds, never to be seen again.
Whizzing.
Bertha, utterly confused and soaking, trudged her way back to her chamber and quickly cleaned up, hoping that no one would notice. The princess's party continued on until the early hours. Bertha was beyond exhausted. She finally had a chance to use the latrine for herself, having not had a minute all day. And as she gently placed her buttocks on the velvet-covered planks, she sighed a breath of relief, and the urine did flow. As she did, a shadow began to form in the corner, causing Bertha to flinch nervously. Sorry, there's someone in here," bumbled Bertha. Some muffled footsteps echoed through the room, and the door swung ajar. Some of the last remaining guests scuttled past the now wide-open door, catching an unwanted glimpse of Bertha in this most vulnerable state. Most of them shrieked at the sight of her, quickly alerting the princess, who began to bound over, wondering what the kerfuffle was. Bertha scrambled desperately to close the door, still unable to pinch off her pungent flow. The floor became soaked, but she just managed to close the door in time, slamming it right into the princess's pretty little nose. "That was close," she whispered to herself, red-faced and soaked through, even worse than before. Bertha trudged to the sink and attempted once again to clear up the mess of piss and the princess's borrowed gown. The shadow in the room once again stirred. Bertha heard a foul cackle echo around the walls of the latrine. Bertha hurriedly exited, swinging open the door to see the furious face of the princess still standing there, gawking at her ruined gown. "You pissy wench! Be gone at once, and never disgrace these halls with your piss flaps again!" Bertha wept as she ran away, all the way back to her mother's cottage. Her bladder was still bursting. The relief never came from her overfilled bladder, but at least she was home. She ran to the outhouse and shut herself inside. This time a pair of beady eyes stared out from the darkness at Bertha, startling her and making her most uncomfortable. Just then, again as before, the door swung open, exposing her to the world. The attractive farm boy she once dreamed of marrying stood open-jawed in disgust of what was now visible to him. He fell into a pile of manure as he backed away. The eyes of darkness seemed to twinkle, as if laughing, and then disappeared. The witch's curse lingered from this day onwards, following Bertha wherever she went to the toilet. For the rest of her days, Bertha was never able to get relief, and indeed never pissed alone again, until one day, when her bladder became so inflamed that it burst, and she died. The end.
So will you tell us how it relates now to real life?
I want to know if which one are you, basically? Are you the old lady in
I'm
this
Bertha.
story?
No, she's
I'm
Bertha.
I am an anxious weir, that is a thing. So the real story is quite simple. I was desperate. I'd been at work all day and it was a long shift and I was desperate for a wee. And I don't normally use the train toilets because they're kind of gross. But on this occasion, I was desperate. And it was one of those like fancy pants trains with the electric doors that like have a button to like open and close it and lock it. Yeah, and you know how hard they are to figure out if they're actually locked? Well, on this occasion, I thought it was locked, but it wasn't. So I started pissing, and someone just pinged open the door with the button whilst I was in mid-pungent flow. And
you couldn't pinch off that
I
pungent
couldn't pinch it off. And the guy just sort of stood there and gawked at me the whole time, watching me piss, and didn't shut the door and just went, "Oh, sorry," and then just stood there. Didn't try to close the door, didn't move. It just stood there and watched it. So I had to like waddle over to the button with my trousers around my ankles, falling over myself to press the button to close the door. And I managed to like finish off, right, weeing, wash my hands and all that. And I opens the door to come out. He's still there in exactly the same space. And to this day, I refuse to use train toilets because I have
I
anxiety.
think you have to be clear. You said you couldn't pinch off the pungent flow, but then you waddled over to the door.
I'll be honest, it was touch and go. I wasn't in a good place.
I mean, on a plane, you know it's locked because it's a physical lock, and also you can touch the door without standing up. But on a train, you never know. And I've heard this as well. You never know if it's locked. You can even say locked, and then you could just totally open it. It's like a fake lock. What's that all about?
Did you like how the witch just pissed off into the sky?
She whizzed. That was great.
Never to be seen again.
I enjoyed that pun.
We were going to explore like her various jobs, being a jester, while also doing the chickens, while also manning the doors and stopping people from kicking off, while also like vacuuming and also, but
we had to keep it within 5 minutes. So.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're cursed to this day?
I still feel anxious.
Do you
Honestly,
carry
I
this with
never
you
quite
everywhere?
know if the doors are locked when I go to the toilet, and it does make me anxious, and I can't wait.
Yeah. And you've lived through the worst case scenario, so that's always
It
just going to be in
haunts
the
me,
back of your mind.
like the witch.
Sometimes, even when you're in the comfort of your own home and you sit down on the pan, you can see it in your mind's eye.
And I sit on those velvety
That man's
planks.
little face.
She rested her buttocks on those stuff. Thanks.
Buttocks.
I make a point of leaving the door open at home just because.
What, to assert dominance?
That's the only place in the world I can do it. Why didn't you just sit there and say, "Hey mate, can you shut the door?
Can you pass me some loo roll, please?
Come in,
He lent us a hand.
come in. I'll move over to one side. You can move my buttocks out the way. Piss."
So, like, you literally had to waddle
Yeah,
from the
it was-
pan to the door again, whilst he stood and he was still looking in there.
Staring. He didn't break eye contact at any point.
It was a small toilet though, right?
Oh.
It wasn't like you were. I'm imagining it like a big.
The toilet was relatively big, because that's why I had to waddle, because I couldn't reach.
Right.
It was an
The
experience.
size of this room.
It was bigger than this room, David.
Fucking hell. The toilet on the train is bigger than this room that we do.
They
our
don't know how big
podcasting.
this room is.
I do.
Well, can you fit an entire pram in your room, and also
Yeah,
do shit at the
easy.
same
Oh,
time?
Oh yes.
Huh.
David's tried it.
Okay. Oh, very fancy.
Often I'll do that.
La di da.
David refuses to use toilets. He'll only shit in prams.
Well, I'm really pleased about that story because I think that's what Real to the Breal is all about.
Reliving horrors.
Yes, and like if you think about it, the Grimms would have loved a story like that.
Yeah.
They would have ruined
They would have
it, but
eaten that shit up.
This is the kind of public service announcement they were all about. There's a real life lesson in this.
There is a life lesson. And then if they have locks on the doors back then, they should have. Bertha would have never had the issue, right? Because it
Sure,
was
they
just
had
locked.
locks on the doors.
I think what they used to do is put a little skull covered in gems outside the bathroom door, and then whoever came up would be like, "Fuck, there's someone in there."
That was Bertha's mistake. She didn't have a feathery wife.
What was the I didn't actually notice what the reason was with the old lady getting so offended
She
with
got
Bertha.
turned away from the party.
Was she turned away? I
Like
thought she'd
Beauty
be
and the Beast.
from the party, but she was allowed to do a
No,
patient.
she wasn't
really?
allowed. She just
Or
did
she
it.
just did
Just
one.
herself.
What do you call it?
Her
Assaulted her
felt
with
fluid
one.
was trickling down her legs. Her disgusting legs in a vile
It's
puddle.
not right. She wasn't like, "Oh, I'm allowed, am I?" No, you're really not. We're outside.
Right.
I'd really rather you didn't.
So, like, presumably, this old woman, the rest of the time she's been up to her house, she'd always be invited in. And only this time she's
I
turned
think
away.
it's the first time she turned up. It's like that one in
I think
fucking
she was
Beauty and
just
the Beast.
busting. You know, she was just busting for a wee, popped in.
She's so pissy though, like.
Oh, so she wasn't like some kind of witch that was used to flying across the sky with a stream of piss. That was totally
I think
new.
that was a new thing.
When that happened, she was as shocked as
Yeah.
anybody as
She
shot
probably
into the
died
air.
when she landed, because let's be fair, there's only so much piss it's going to get you into the air that you're going to run out eventually.
You're gonna get back down.
Well, yeah. And if it's the first time she's done it, she wouldn't have the ability to descend on a stream.
She might have been wearing a big dress.
Remember in fucking Jingle All the Way, where he goes all the way up to the sky with his Turbo Man outfit, and then it switches it off, and he just very much like that.
You know what she needed? Some tenor lady. They would absorb it,
Fucking hell,
and then
yeah.
it could slow her down
Or
as she was
catch
going
her.
down. Yeah. No,
Like
so
a-
catch the wee, so it'll slow her. I don't know how much wee it's going to catch.
That's
to
a
be fair.
very complicated system you're proposing. That's
Temporary
proposal,
tenor lady.
proposal.
Yeah, and you got to think she'd have to think of all of this on the fly.
Hey, if I get
On
some
the
tenor
fly.
ladies and I put them in a certain way of a flow, and I can slow it down, I can land it. Super dead by
But she feels pretty as she's going, so it's fine.
protected and pretty. So what do you want to do? Do you want to pack something else into this episode, or do you just want to end it all now?
Press 2 to end it all now.
It's a bit of fun, isn't it?
Have we got enough content now that I can go to
Go
bed?
to bed, Kate.
It's
We're all
8:30,
good.
you maniac.
It's
Too
half eight.
early.
Fucking-
Yeah, but I haven't slept in
I
5
think
days.
shit, it's like midnight. It's
What's
fucking
wrong
half
with
eight.
you?
With Kate too tired to finish the podcast and going to bed early, and Jen being too ill to play any harp due to her severe wasp stings, we decided to play this clip to end the episode. This is a song called Bowel Malfunction.